Imagine walking into the Melbourne cricket ground. 100,000 screaming fans are just packed into the grandstands.
Oh yeah, the tension is thick enough to cut with a knife.
Exactly. And the ultimate underdog is staring down this undefeated, seemingly invincible juggernaut. It is the absolute pinnacle of sports drama. Except, well, none of the players on that field actually have pulses.
Right, they don't have muscles, no million-dollar contract.
Definitely no coach yelling at them from the sidelines, because they are entirely the product of a pair of plastic dice rolling across a table.
It's wild.
It is. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking you, our listener, into a very strange, kind of puzzle-like exploration of a single cryptic document. We are looking at a raw datasheet titled AFT Dice Season 12, Round 11 Preview, and it's dated Friday, the 10th of April, 2026.
It really is this captivating artifact. Like at first glance, you might just see a dry utilitarian spreadsheet.
Yeah, it looks like a wall of numbers and dashes and cryptic codes.
Exactly. But our mission today is to decode this simulation of an Australian rules football league.
Yeah.
Because once you understand the mechanics of what's happening here, you realize that hidden inside this random number generator are these sweeping underdog stories.
And massive statistical anomalies.
Yeah. And honestly, a really profound reflection on why we even care about sports in the first place.
Okay, so let's unpack this and start by decoding the matrix here because, well, when I first looked at this document, I was genuinely confused.
I don't blame you.
Right, because every team playing in this round 11 preview has a sequence of numbers attached to them, and it's labeled simply as their picture. So, for example, the West Coast Eagles have a picture of 1-7-3-0, and then the Western Bulldogs have a picture of 18-2-8-0. So before we get into the drama of the actual games, what exactly are we looking at here?
Well, we have to break down the cryptography of the league structure first. And just for our international listeners, Australian sports leagues use a ladder instead of like a standings table. But, I mean, it means the exact same thing.
Right.
So the key to unlocking this whole code is actually right there in the document's header. It says Round 11 Preview.
Which tells us every team has completed exactly 10 games.
Exactly. So if you look at the last 3 digits of the Eagles code, the 7, the 3, and the 0, they add up perfectly to 10.
Okay, so it's literally just a standard win-loss draw record, like 7 wins, 3 losses, 0 draws.
Precisely. The format is ladder position, and then that's followed by wins, losses, and draws.
Okay, got it.
So that first number is just their rank out of the 18 teams in the league, meaning the Eagles are sitting in first place, and the Bulldogs are, well, dead last in 18th place.
Okay, but wait, I have to challenge the premise here.
Go for it.
If this is AFT Dice, which obviously implies a tabletop simulation where the outcomes of these footy games are determined by a random number generator or literal dice rolls.
Yeah.
How does the ladder look so much like a real structured sports league? I mean, you've got West Coast dominating with 7 wins. You've got the Bulldogs struggling with only 2. Shouldn't a league based entirely on random chance just be this uniform gray blob where everyone is hovering around like 5 wins and 5 losses?
That is the exact trap most of us fall into when we think about probability. We intuitively assume that random just means evenly distributed.
Because it should be, right, 50-50.
Well, in the long run, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Say over 1 million dice rolls, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
The law of large numbers dictates that everything eventually regresses to the mean.
Right.
But this isn't 1 million games. This is just a snapshot of a 10-game season. And in a small sample size, variance is absolute king.
So just because the sample size is small, the mathematical weirdness basically gets magnified.
Exactly. Even if every single team in this simulated league has the exact same theoretical 50-50 odds of winning before the dice are rolled, the actual outcomes are going to cluster.
Right, like flipping a coin.
Yeah, if you flip a coin 10 times, getting 7 heads and 3 tails isn't some crazy anomaly. You know, it actually happens quite often.
And in this league, getting 7 heads makes you the West Coast Eagles. It makes you a championship contender.
And getting 2 heads makes you the Western Bulldogs. The system naturally generates this hierarchy of quote-unquote good teams and bad teams entirely through just the standard deviation of random chance.
Wow, that is fascinating. It's almost like looking at the night sky. Like the stars are scattered completely randomly across the darkness, but our human brains just can't handle the randomness, so we connect the dots and say, oh, look, there's a hunter or there's a bear.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
The dice are just dropping random wins and losses, but we connect the dots and call it momentum or, a team in crisis.
Exactly. And once that structure exists, like once the math creates a definitive top and a bottom, we instantly apply a narrative to it. Which actually brings us to the extremes of the ladder in this specific Round 11 preview.
Yeah, let's talk about those extremes because the matchmaking for this specific weekend of simulated footy is honestly almost too perfect to be random.
It really is.
We have the West Coast Eagles, ranked number 1 at 7-3, and they are hosting the Western Bulldogs, ranked number 18 at 2-8. I mean, that is the absolute top team playing against the absolute bottom team.
And it doesn't just happen once.
No. Over at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, we have Richmond, who are sitting in second place with a 7-3 record, hosting St. Kilda, who are in 17th place with a 2-8 record.
The symmetry there is incredible. First versus 18th, second versus 17th. It is the ultimate David versus Goliath setup, occurring twice in the exact same round.
But I keep coming back to the sort of existential question of this whole exercise. You listening to this right now, think about the last time you watched your favorite team go on a devastating losing streak.
It hurts.
It does. You probably blamed the coach. You blamed lack of heart or effort. You felt the heavy, miserable weight of that record.
Absolutely.
In the simulation, St. Kilda is wearing a 2-8 jersey. It's a heavy jersey, even if it's completely made of pixels and data. But if we know intellectually that St. Kilda's performance is going to be dictated by literally a piece of plastic tumbling across a table, why does it feel like a daunting task? Why do they feel like the underdog?
What's fascinating here is that we willingly suspend our disbelief just to project human emotion onto the data.
Right.
Like when that 2-8 St. Kilda team walks into the MCG to face a 7-3 Richmond juggernaut, the underlying mathematics of the game haven't changed at all.
Right.
The dice do not remember the previous 10 rounds. St. Kilda has the exact same statistical probability of rolling a winning number as Richmond does.
Because the dice have no memory.
Yeah.
They don't know that St. Kilda supposedly has terrible morale.
Right, but the latter has a memory, and we have a memory. If St. Kilda wins this game, intellectually we know it isn't a statistical marvel. It's literally just a quirk of the random number generator landing in their favor.
Right.
But narratively, it's thrilling. A St. Kilda win feels like this massive disruption to the established order. We cheer for the upset, entirely forgetting that the quote-unquote order of the league was just an illusion created by variance in the first place.
We are desperately rooting for tails just to see the streak of heads broken.
Exactly.
Okay, so variance creates this really clean, dramatic top and bottom. But what happens to the teams that don't hit those statistical extremes? Are they just trapped in this perfectly balanced purgatory?
Oh, they absolutely are. If the top and bottom of the ladder give us these clear, sweeping narratives, the middle of the ladder is where the true muddy chaos lives.
The average teams.
Yeah, because the definition of mathematical average in a 10-game sample is 5 wins and 5 losses. And we have a massive logjam of teams sitting right there. Look at the clash schedule between Carlton and the Sydney Swans.
Yeah, Carlton is sitting in 12th place. Sydney is in 10th place. And both of them have an identical picture of 5 wins, 5 losses, and 0 draws.
Is the dictionary definition of a coin flip matchup.
Right.
You have two incredibly average 500 teams battling it out to see who gets to peek their head above the mediocrity line and who slides down into the bottom third of the league.
It's an existential battle for relevance.
Cobley.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because hovering right above that 5-5 logjam is where we find the absolute weirdest piece of data on this entire sheet.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Hawthorn.
Oh, yes. So
because I'm looking at Hawthorn's record in 6th place, and it honestly feels like a glitch in the simulation. Their code reads 6-5-3-2. So
Okay.
6 is their ladder position, then 5 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws. 2 ties in just 10 games.
this is where we really need to dig into the mechanics of the sport to understand why this is such a mind-boggling statistical anomaly.
I mean, on the surface, seeing 2 draws doesn't sound that crazy. Like, if you are a fan of European football or soccer, a draw is just a Tuesday. Teams go 1-1 or 0-0 all the time.
All the time, yeah.
So why is this blowing your mind in an Australian rules football simulation?
Because of the scoring system in Australian rules football.
Wow.
In footy, you don't score in increments of 1.
Right.
You get 6 points for kicking a goal through the main posts and 1 point for a behind. This means final scores are routinely things like 84-72 or 105-98.
Oh, okay.
So the numerical surface area for a final score is absolutely massive.
The margin for error is vast.
Huge. For a game of footy to end in a draw, both teams have to navigate that massive scoring landscape and land on the exact same arbitrary high number.
Wow.
Now, think about how a tabletop sports simulator has to replicate that. They usually use complex lookup tables and multi-dice rolls, like rolling 2 6-sided dice or even 100-sided percentiles to generate a realistic bell curve of scores.
Oh, it's not a flat distribution where every score is equally likely. The game is mathematically designed to push teams toward a realistic average score, making an exact tie incredibly rare.
Exactly. The algorithm requires an incredibly specific, narrow set of overlapping dice rolls for both teams to land on the exact same point total.
Wow.
A draw is a rare event in real-life footy, and the math of this simulation is clearly designed to make it a rare event on the tabletop.
Which is glaringly obvious when you look at the rest of the sheet. I mean, almost every other team has a big fat 0 in that final column. West Coast, 0 draws. Bulldogs, 0 draws. Melbourne, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Fremantle, Adelaide, Carlton, Sydney, Richmond, St Kilda, all 0.
And yet Hawthorn has managed to hit that microscopic sub-1% statistical window twice in just 10 weeks.
It's like getting struck by lightning, recovering, and then getting struck by lightning again while walking to your car in the hospital parking lot.
It really is.
But what fascinates me isn't just the math of it, it's the consequence. Look at what those 2 rare tie outcomes have done to their season's trajectory.
It has fundamentally altered their destiny. I mean, if those draws had been losses, Hawthorn would be 5-5.
Oh, wow.
They'd be sucked right down into that chaotic, muddy purgatory with Carlton and Sydney just fighting for relevance in 10th or 12th place.
But because they secured premiership points from those microscopic anomaly draws, they are floating just above the chaos. They're sitting comfortably in 6th place, looking like a highly competent, competitive football club.
It perfectly highlights how a single, bizarre statistical quirk can just rewrite a team's entire narrative. And what makes it even richer is who Hawthorn is playing this week.
Right, they play Essendon.
Yep, Hawthorn is scheduled to play Essendon, and Essendon is sitting right at 11th place with a perfectly average 5-5-0 record.
The contrast is brilliant. You have Essendon, the picture of binary win-or-lose mediocrity, taking on Hawthorn, the statistical unicorns who have literally drawn their way into the upper echelon of the ladder.
It's incredible. Now, we've decoded the standings, we've explored the psychology of the underdog, and we've mapped out the anomalies. But there is one final layer to this document that grounds all of this abstract mathematics into reality.
Okay.
We have to talk about the geography of chance.
Right, because the creators of AFT Dice didn't just give us the matchups. They didn't just say Team A rolls against Team B. They assigned every single one of these virtual games to a legendary real-world stadium.
Yeah.
Let me just read through some of these venues.
Please do. Notice the scale of these places.
We've got the West Coast Eagles and Western Bulldogs playing at Optus Stadium over in Perth. Port Adelaide taking on the Brisbane Lions at the Adelaide Oval. Gold Coast Suns versus Fremantle up at Metricon Stadium. The GWS Giants and Adelaide Crows at Giant Stadium. Essendon and Hawthorn plus Carlton and Sydney playing double duty at Marvel Stadium.
And then there's the big one.
And then the crown jewel. This preview sheet has the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the MCG, hosting 3 massive games in round 11. You've got Collingwood versus Geelong Cats, Melbourne versus North Melbourne, and that Richmond versus St Kilda mismatch we talked about earlier.
3 games at the MCG in one weekend, the 100,000-seat Coliseum of Australian sport. Honestly, the simulated traffic around Yarra Park must be an absolute nightmare.
Right. But seriously, so what does this all mean? Why go through the trouble? If I am building a spreadsheet that uses random numbers to generate wins and losses, why bother typing out Adelaide Oval? The math equation doesn't care what building it happens in. Does the game engine actually give a mathematical +1 to the home team's dice roll or something?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, even if it doesn't offer a mechanical home field advantage, like even if it is purely cosmetic, the inclusion of the venues is vital. It is all about emotional weight.
Emotional weight.
Grounding raw data in real-world geography is the magic trick that turns a mathematical output into a visceral event.
Oh, I see. It bridges the gap between a spreadsheet and a living, breathing sports season.
Exactly. Without the stadiums, this is just a list of variables in a computer program resolving equations.
Yeah.
But the moment you say Collingwood versus Geelong at the MCG, it ceases to be just numbers on a page. You, the listener, instantly visualize the massive, sweeping grandstands.
Yeah.
You hear the roar of the crowd. You feel the chill in the April air.
Even though the crowd is made of air and the shill is literally just a line of text.
It forces empathy and context. Playing at the MCG, the spiritual home of the sport, feels fundamentally different than playing a twilight game at Metricon Stadium. The ghosts of past games, the historic weight of the venue, the pressure of a grand final atmosphere, we willingly attach all of that heavy cultural baggage to a completely fresh, random roll of the dice.
It gives the simulation a soul. You aren't just calculating a result, you are attending an event. You can imagine the Port Adelaide fans packing into the Adelaide Oval, screaming their lungs out, completely unaware that their fate against the Brisbane Lions has already been decided by the tumbling of polyhedrals on a desk somewhere.
Which is, in a strange, somewhat humbling way, exactly what being a real-life sports fan feels like.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Think about it. You sit in the stands, wearing your team's colors, completely powerless, watching chaotic physics and unpredictable human variance dictate the trajectory of a leather ball, just hoping the math leans in your favor today.
Wow. That is incredibly profound. It really makes you step back and marvel at what we've actually uncovered here today. I mean, we've covered an immense amount of ground from a single piece of paper.
We really did. We took a cryptic, dry list of fixtures for a Friday in April 2026, and we unraveled an entire universe.
We cracked the cryptographic code of the picture format to reveal the hidden standings. We explored how variance in a small 10-game sample size creates these massive, lopsided underdog battles at the very top and bottom of the ladder, which fools our brains into seeing momentum.
And we broke down the mechanics of footy scoring to understand the utterly bizarre statistical anomaly of Hawthorn hitting a sub-1% draw outcome twice, vaulting themselves away from the mid-table mediocrity.
And we took a grand tour of the stadiums of Australia, exploring how a simple venue name can breathe life into cold, hard data, giving emotional weight to pure mathematics. It has honestly been a masterclass in how much story and drama can be squeezed out of just a few lines of text.
It's a testament to the design of the simulation, but also to human psychology. And I think there is one final lingering thought that we should leave the listener with as we wrap up this deep dive.
Lay it on us. What's the takeaway?
Well, we've spent this entire time dissecting the narratives of AFT Dice. We've talked about underdogs, momentum, hot streaks, and the historic weight of the MCG. But we know, unequivocally, that every single outcome in this league is generated by pure, flat, random chance.
Right.
So if a simple dice simulation can generate this much genuine tension, this much narrative structure, and this much underdog lore, what does that say about our deep human need to project stories and meaning onto the random chaos of our own reality?
Oh, wow.
Are the real-world sports we watch every weekend truly carefully crafted dramas of pure skill, heart, and willpower?
Yeah.
Or are we all just staring at the cascading numbers of our own universe, desperately trying to find the shape of a hero in the noise?
That's something to think about. Next time you are screaming at your television because your team just blew a massive lead, or you see a jagged white line on an x-ray, or you're just staring at the cascading code of a spreadsheet at work, just remember, the real story isn't the data. The real story is whatever your mind decides to build out of the numbers.